In this video, we're going to break down Russo's sprint analysis by 1, identifying what he's doing well, 2, identifying what he can do even better, 3, explaining why he's running the way he's running, and 4, in the next video, what I will prescribe him in order to make him run even faster. So to start, I've broken every strength and weakness into 3 categories: the preparation phase, the early drive phase, and the late drive phase. The preparation phase refers to anything that happens before he initiates his sprint. So this can be the ladder exercise, or from a dead start, just holding that position. In the early drive phase, this refers to his first 4 strides. So 2 on his right and 2 on his left. The late drive phase is going to refer to anything that happens after those first 4 strides. So throughout the ladder exercise, he does a really good job of triple extending. This means that his ankles, knees, and hips are all extending fully as he pushes off the ground. Now this is really important to maximize the amount of force that he can push into the ground. Approaching the end of the ladder, he begins to transition and lean forward at the ankles. And to understand why this is important, first you have to understand 3 concepts. 1, center of gravity, 2, center of pressure, and 3, base of support. So center of gravity refers to a point or a dot in space that represents a distribution of the body's mass. So right now, my center of gravity is inside of my body, under my belly button. But if I were to do this, my center of gravity will shift towards that side. If I were to flex at the hips and flex at the shoulders, my center of gravity will move towards the camera. Now my center of pressure or my center of gravity can actually leave my body. So if I were to do this, my center of gravity is somewhere in this space. Center of gravity can exist outside of your body. Now moving on to center of pressure, if you draw a straight line down from center of gravity, that line where it intersects with the ground, that is your center of pressure. So in an upright position, my center of pressure lies right in between my feet. But if I were to start to lean over, like this, then my center of gravity is right here. My center of pressure will be somewhere around there. So just to recap, center of gravity is a point in space. Center of pressure is a point on the ground. Now moving on to base of support, this is an area on the ground. An area that includes any contact points and anything in between. So in this position, my base of support, you can draw a rectangle around my feet, and this area in between and also under my feet are my base of support. Now to accelerate, your center of pressure has to leave and pull away from your base of support. Now there's a number of ways to do this. For 1, if I were to step back very fast and keep my upper body where it is, watch what I do. I had to accelerate to catch myself. Now another way of getting your center of pressure in front of your base of support is to lean forward at the hips. At some point, I'll have to accelerate and catch myself once again. Now Russo does a really good job of this by leaning forward at the ankles. And this is good because this is the best way most of the time, not all the time, to get your center of pressure out in front of your base of support. This is because it allows more of your body's mass to contribute to pulling that center of gravity out in front. Also, it puts your body in a better position to start pushing off rather than breaking at the hips. Now moving into the early drive phase, Russo does a good job of engaging the abdominals, and this is really important because through the acceleration, this keeps his center of pressure out in front of him, and if you weren't to engage, he would start to lean back, his center of gravity come with him, his center of pressure would follow his base of support, and he won't be able to push back and accelerate him forward as efficiently. Another thing he does really well is keeping his feet close together. So this is what I mean. When he's accelerating, his feet don't get too far away. Now this is important because the farther your base of support is from your center of pressure, the more efficiently you can transfer your applied force into forward acceleration. Now, if I were to increase my stride length and my base of support comes too close to my center of pressure, I'll start to apply too much force down instead of back. What this will do is this will push me up into the air rather than forward, which is what we want. Another piece of evidence that he's doing this well is that he's contacting the ground with his mid to forefoot and not his heel. See, if I'm contacting the ground behind me and far from my center of pressure, I'm contacting with my toe or with my midfoot. But as stride lengths begin to increase, right, heel striking becomes more and more prevalent, and his heel never touches the ground. Lastly, in the late drive phase, his foot placement begins to catch up to his center of pressure. Now, unlike the early drive phase, this is a good thing because when you accelerate, you want to spend as much time on the ground as possible. You are not able to accelerate or decelerate or change direction when you're in the air. You can only change direction, speed up or slow down when you're on the ground. Once he is approaching or has already achieved his maximal speed, what he wants to do is maintain this as efficiently as possible. This means spending less time on the ground and more time in the air, because this will provide him less opportunity to slow down because he's on the ground for less time. Now I can make an endless list of things that he's doing well, but these are just some of the features that I wanted to point out in this video. Moving on to things that we want to improve, let's start in the preparation phase. Starting with the ladder exercise, I chose this because it mimics, in my opinion, the hardest part of sprinting, which is triple extending on one side and a hard knee drive on the other. However, this is a much simpler movement than the whole motion of running itself. So throughout the ladder exercise, we saw that Russo does a good job of triple extending. However, his swing leg isn't doing much. Now, if he can't do this here, we can pretty much guess that he won't be able to do both triple extend and have a hard knee drive during the full motion of sprinting. And in addition to that, he's letting the ground hit him instead of hitting the ground. To do this, he would have to load up in the air and extend at the knees and hips and ankles before striking the ground. This would increase the velocity of his foot and contribute to the amount of force that he pushed into the ground. Right now, he's pretty much extended all the way through the ladder exercise. Now, this could be due to a lack of coordination or a lack of strength. But knowing Russo's capacities and also knowing that he wasn't injured at the time of filming this, I would confidently say that it was not because of a lack of strength. Now, moving into the early drive phase, his swing leg continues to drag, but now his stance leg is not going to triple extension anymore. Now, this can be due to a number of reasons, and after doing relevant research, I found that these reasons can all be linked to one another. I'll get into more details in the next video. His initial steps in the sprint push down instead of back. I concluded this as he spends way too much time in the air. Because again, if he pushes down, his body will go up. If he pushes back, his body will accelerate forward. Now, as I said earlier, he does a good job of keeping his feet close together. But I believe that this is a method of compensation. If he were to push in the same direction that he's pushing right now, except now he triple extended, maintained a neutral spine, and swung his drive leg all the way through, he would almost be leaping from leg to leg instead of sprinting. So what he does to compensate is he cuts his strides short. He does not extend all the way, he cuts it short, he rounds his back, and he flexes at the hips, just so that he can stay planted on the ground. Now, after pushing off, getting that knee to snap back in front of him and ready to stride again is commonly undermined in soccer training. This can be done more efficiently by bringing his heel closer to his glutes. What this does is this shortens the leg that he has to swing. An analogy would be baseball players using a shorter bat to swing faster. We talked about how his force can be transferred into forward acceleration, but we did not discuss that force can be lost through rotational and lateral components. Now what Russo's doing is he's rotating at the trunk, so he's dropping his shoulders one at a time, and during heel recovery, his feet are crossing over to the other side. This indicates that he's losing out on forward acceleration. Now lastly, Russo's head is shifted anteriorly. What this does is it breaks the bridge between his head and his body. When you want to accelerate, you want to push as much force into the ground as possible. And when you break at the neck, the mass of your head is not contributing to that. So how do I plan on addressing these areas of improvement? First, I have to understand his demands, his capacities, and his constraints. His demands is that he has to run fast. His capacity is that he's strong enough to do what I prescribe him. Now his constraint, because of the pandemic, he's been training every single day, sometimes even twice a day. He's often in a fatigued state, so his constraint is fatigue and his body.